Hello, and welcome to Element Manipulation using CSS3. My name is Paul Sheriff. I'm a business solutions architect with Fairway Technologies Incorporated. Fairway Technologies specializes in custom software development. Check us out at fairwaytech.com. My assumptions for this course is that you already know how to use CSS, and you're interested in learning how to manipulate elements a little bit better using some of the new CSS3 features. We're going to take a look at some of the new functions you can use in your CSS rule sets. We're also going to take a look at transforms and transitions. There are quite a few new functions that CSS3 is adding, but not all of them are really widely adopted. I'm going to cover just some of the ones that are fairly well supported by most of the browsers today. Now, functions are things that you simply use within your CSS rules. We're going to take a look at the attribute function, which allows you to read attributes and then do something with that. Calculate, which will help you perform calculations, usually on width or height or things like that. And counter, which allows you to count items. Let's take a look at using some of these new functions. Let's take a look at the attribute function. Let's go ahead and run this sample HTML here. So you can see we have a button, post to Facebook, post to Twitter, post to LinkedIn, and post to Snapchat. That looks reasonable. Here is the code, the HTML. So you can see the button, the title says Facebook, the title says Twitter, the title says LinkedIn, and the title says Snapchat. What's in the text of the button is post to, followed by a space. So all I'm doing here is on that button, I'm saying after the text, set the content to the attribute that's in title. There's the attribute title, so the content, it's going to grab that data and add it after the text. Let's take a look at the calc function. The calc function allows you to calculate some width or height. So the width of this box happens to be calculated. Let's take a look at the code here. So I've got a div with a class of calculated. Inside of that, I got a p tag. So here's the class calculated. Now the main thing, all the rest of this is just regular styling. What the important part is here is the width. And I'm saying calculate 100% minus 100 pixels. So what it figures out is the width of the browser, because the container is with the whole width of the browser. That's 100%. But take away 100 pixels. By doing that, that gives us our margins on the either side here as we grow and shrink the browser. Now let's figure out the counter function. The counter function, watch this, I'm going to click on each of these, and as I make changes here, you can see this value down here is changing based on how many are selected. So how does this work? Well, again, let's take a look at the HTML first. I have a div in the class container. It's got 4 input types that are checkbox, and rock, country, jazz, and punk. And then down here, I've got another div with a class of total. It says total selected, colon, and then a space. So we've got to remember this class of total here. The total says after the content, put in the content from the counter of count. What is that? Well, what I've done here is there's a property we can set called counter-reset, and we just make up a name, so count. Could be whatever you want to call it. Counter increment count whenever we detect input is checked. So what happens is it just basically, this is a selector, right, that says let's select all elements that are checked and increment for each one of those this count variable. We can then add all of those up, and we place the result of that from the counter function after this text. Another way we can manipulate elements using CSS3 is with transforms. Transforms applies 2D or 3D transformations on a specific element. We can rotate an element, we can scale an element, we can skew an element, and we can move an element. Let's take a look at using transforms. The first thing we're going to look at is rotating. So here I've got some images. I've got an image of a Can-Am spider here, and we can rotate it to the right. We can rotate it to the left. We can even make it go completely upside down. So let's take a look at how this is coded. So I've got an image with a class of right, class of left, and a class of upside down. The source is all the same JPEG here. And if we take a look at each of these classes, then we've got the right, it says transform and rotate 12 degrees. Left is transform and rotate minus 12 degrees. And then rotate 180 degrees, which of course gives us a thing upside down. So pretty easy to rotate images or any HTML element. Another type of transform we can do is what's called translate. Now this allows you to move items either down or over or both. So in this case I have a blue box and I have a red box that is down and over just a little bit. If we look at the HTML, it's just two divs, one inside the other, with a class of outer and a class of moved. So both divs are a height of 24 and a width of 24 and a height of 14 with a solid black border. The outer one is a background of blue. The moved is background color of red. And then here is the transform, where I translate. I call the translate function, and I say I want to move down by 2 ems and over left by 2 ems. If you change these values, of course, it's going to change how much things move. So we'll just double the size of that, and now you can see that the red box has been moved over by 4 ems and down by 4 ems. You may also, on a specific property, both translate and rotate. So here you can see I've got some rotated text right here. How did we do that? Well, I just created a p tag, and then on the p tag I specified that it was absolute positioned down top 5. And then the transform is translate 1em, so that's the top, and 2em, that's the left, and you rotate it 90 degrees as well. So we can both translate and rotate all on one single element. Another way you can transform UI elements is to scale them. Here I've got a box that's gray and a box that's red. The red box is 2 times larger than the gray box. Here's the actual code where we've got a div with a class of normal and a div with a class of scaled. If we take a look, I've got a div. Each div is a width of 2 ems and a height of 2 ems with a padding of 1. But the normal simply has background color of gray, and the second one, called scaled, has a background color of red, but the transform scale function has been applied that says I want to grow it by 2 times the width and 2 times the height. Another option for transforming UI elements is to skew that particular element. So in this way you can see that things have been skewed off a little bit. Not much, but just kind of a little bit of skewing going on here. Let's take a look at how we did that. Again, just a simple little div. But this div, as you can see, transform skew by 4 degrees on the x-axis and 6 degrees on the y-axis. Change these to other numbers. Maybe we make that one a 12, and then you can see how it makes this skewing just a lot more dramatic. Now, you're not going to use this all the time, but on certain elements, this can give you a desired effect. This next option is kind of neat, but really you're probably not going to use this too much, but it does give you 3D rotation. And again, this one doesn't work in a lot of browsers, so you'd have to check. I mean, for instance, it really doesn't work in IE, so kind of a limit applicability on this. I'm not even going to go into a lot of the code. It's all there for you when you download the sample. But as you can see, there's not a lot of CSS here. There is a PNG file that we have, so it shows both the back and the front of this particular iPhone. And then all the rest of this is just done with CSS. I'll let you explore this one and look up how this works on the web. Another way to manipulate elements with CSS3 is through transitions. Transitions perform animation on an element. We have a transition property, the name of the property that the transition effect is going to affect, and the transition duration, how many seconds or milliseconds the transition is going to take to complete. The transition timing function, so basically the speed curve. Do you want it to go fast at the beginning, then slow down? Do you want it linear all the way while it's doing the animation? Lots of different choices here for the timing function. And then the delay, how long until that transition effect actually starts. Let's take a look at a few transitions. Our first example will show how you can grow a box using animation. And it happens as soon as you hover over the box. Notice that the transition doesn't start immediately. It actually starts 0.5 seconds after hovering or removing yourself from the blue box. Here's the box. The ID is the box to grow. Pretty simple. So the div here, right, it has a width of 6 and a height of 6. The background color is blue, and then we've set the transition property to the width, because that's what we're growing, is the width. I want it to take 1 second to perform the animation. The timing is linear, so it goes at the same rate. You could actually specify that you want it to go fast at the beginning and then slow down, or slow at the beginning and then speed up as it gets closer to the end. And the transition delay that you want. So again, 0.5 seconds. On hover, we're going to change the width to 16. So the width is going from 6 to 16 on hover. At that point, these properties now take over and determine the animation and start this animation over 1 second in a linear manner, but only start after it's been hovered over for 0.5 seconds. Our next transition shows how you might move a box from one place to another. So again, you hover over it and it starts, take it away, and it goes back. Again, we take a look. The left has to be set because the left is our transition property now. Still saying do the transition over 1 second and linear manner. What we're doing is we're going from a left of 2 to 16. Again, when we hover over our div. So pretty simple to understand. I mean, these transitions are not very complicated. It's just a matter of making sure that the property that you want to transition has to be set at the very beginning. And of course, as you'd expect, we can both transition and rotate just by having a little hover over this blue box. But there's one little caveat with this one here. Unfortunately, when you're trying to transition a couple of different properties, you are going to need to specify some of the other transitions and transforms for the specific browser you're on. So for WebKit would be what for the Chrome and Safari, the -ms- transition would be for IE, and Mozilla would be for Firefox. So you will need to specify these here in order to get this particular sample to work. In this video, we took a look at how some functions that are now available in CSS3 can make your HTML just a little more dynamic. Transforms allow you to present some interesting effects on your web pages, and transitions allow you to add animation to your elements. I hope you'll check out some of my Pluralsight videos. I have almost 17 up there now. Just search for Paul Sheriff at pluralsight.com. You can get all the sample code for this particular video log at pdsa.com/downloads, select Fairway Video Blog, and select Element Manipulation using CSS3. Check out fairwaytech.com if you need any sort of developer mentoring or custom software services. And again, search for me, Paul Sheriff, on pluralsight.com. I hope you enjoyed this video.